Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to learn about our fire department and learn about what we do, what we're responsible for, and what we're doing to prepare for the future. So I guess with that, where I want to start is with our mission statement. And the reason why I want to start there is because this is the statement that we came up with as an organization that we feel defines the service that we provide to not only the city of Greenfield, but the Greenfield Fire Protection District, as well as the visitors and people who come into our community that may need our services. So here we go. Greenfield Fire Department protects the heart of the valley with a team of highly trained and motivated professionals who are dedicated to delivering aggressive fire suppression, effective fire prevention, and compassionate patient care. I just want to highlight on a couple of pieces there. One, we provide aggressive fire protection. That means that we're trained and we're ready to go, and you're going to see that tonight as we talk about more about our department. But we take that very seriously. We know that when there's a fire, whether it's a vegetation fire or it's a structure fire, we need to take care of business. We're going to do it safely, but we're going to do it aggressively, and we're going to take care of it as fast as we possibly can, minimize property damage, injuries, and any loss of life that can happen. We're also dedicated to our fire prevention, and that's something, again, we'll talk about that you don't see a lot of, but we believe that the best fire or emergency that can happen is one that never happens. And so what we do behind the scenes is we make sure that we prevent as many of those as we possibly can. And finally, and the bulk of our emergency response business is providing patient care or responding to medical emergencies. And we view the citizens and actually anybody that we respond to as another family member. So we make sure that we provide the best possible patient care, not only in terms of technical treatment, but in terms of bedside care. Next, what I want to talk about is our city's strategic objectives. And again, as we go through this tonight, I'll point out here and there, and we'll conclude with this as well, but how we fit into this plan and what we do to make sure that we're taking care of our piece of this to ensure that the city's moving in the direction that our council and mayor wants us to. So first, number one, ensure a safe environment for all Greenfield community members. So safety is number one. We need a safe community that people can feel comfortable in, and people know that they're safe. Second, promote a diversified, sustainable economy. You're going to see on my PowerPoint here that I've underlined sustainable economy. And particularly when we get into prevention, we'll be talking about that. Ensure a healthy, enriching environment for all Greenfield residents. I think a lot of that fits into the safety component, but we do take that component seriously. And then one of our big things that again, you don't see, but this is just kind of an attitude and something that is ingrained in our department. And as I say that, I want to point out that this existed well before I got here. And that is to develop a first-class governmental structure. What that means is to provide you with the best service possible. As a governmental organization, we're about service. We're about taking your tax dollars and the revenue that we get and taking it back to you to provide you with the highest level of service that we possibly can. That's what we consider our Gold Star. Okay, so what does this really mean? What's our purpose? What does the fire department do? Well, we do three main things. We protect lives, we protect property, and in certain circumstances, we protect the environment. That's our job. We're not the EPA, but again, as we talk about some stuff, we'll get into that. And all three of those things are very important and fit into those strategic objectives that we just talked about. All right, so how do we do this? Well, we do it through three primary ways. That's readiness, response, and prevention. And I'm going to break these down for you here in a little bit. First, we'll talk about readiness and what readiness is. Well, readiness really means two things. One, we're planning and we're preparing. So we plan in different ways, and in a second here, I'm going to talk about that more, but basically, our job is to make sure that if there's an emergency, we're as ready to go as possible. And so that means that we do a lot of maintenance. Our equipment needs to be at 100% of the time. And the same with our firefighters. So we do a lot of training, and we make sure that our personnel are safe and they're effective so that they can provide aggressive fire suppression as well as compassionate patient care. All right, so what does this look like in terms of our daily lives and in terms of how we practice them? What does readiness really look like? Well, every morning we start the day out with checking every vehicle and every piece of equipment. We go through everything. In fact, if you look in our database, you'll see that every morning, and I receive the checklist, that we check everything. We want to make sure that it's ready to go. Even though our crews are on for 24 hours at a time, every day is new. And I'll take that one step further. After every major emergency, we will go through everything and we'll make sure that it's 100%. In fact, it's not uncommon for us, like after we've had a fire or a large event, we'll have a crew on standby that's covering for us, and we'll ask them to stay back long enough so that we can make sure that we're ready to go. Every time we roll out of that fire station, we've got to be 100%. Another part of that is making sure that our people are trained. So we train every single day, and we train one with exercise, making sure that people are physically fit and can do the job. And the second piece of that is training with their skills, both medical as well as fire suppression. And to break that down even further, we have developed what's known as a physician task book program. And what that is a task book is something that focuses on the skills, knowledge and abilities for every single position on that fire engine. And we have three. We have the captain, which sits in the right-hand seat and is the supervisor of that company. Then we have the engineer, who is the driver and the pump operator. And then we have either one, or depending on the day, two firefighters that are sitting in the back. Each one of those positions has a specific skill set that requires certain knowledge and certain abilities to make sure that they can do their job and be as effective as possible. And these task books basically run through our policies, procedures, what we call company evolutions, which is basically what I would call a playbook for how we handle different types of emergencies. And it makes sure that they're signed off, and the word that I like to use is they've shown mastery of the skill or of the knowledge. So that when they've completed that task book and they've been signed off on it, we know with confidence that they can safely fill that position. We're not quite there yet. We've done a little bit of this, but our goal with that in the long term is to make sure that not only do we have people in those seats that are effective, but we've also got them trained up so that when needed, if we need to move them up, whether there's a promotion opportunity, we've lost somebody, there's a staffing issue, something like that, that they can fill a position above them. So the goal in time will be to have every firefighter trained as an engineer, every engineer trained as a captain, and in time here, we'll be working with our captains to make sure that they're prepared to function as a command officer. The next part of planning that we do is we also work with the city manager. Not long after I got here, we put together a capital replacement plan. And basically what that was looking at our equipment that's very expensive. So whether it's fire apparatus or it's extrication tools or it's breathing apparatus, things that are very expensive that last for a number of years. And because it's so expensive, making sure that we know when it's going to be due to rotate out, or it's going to be at its end of life, so we can plan, the city can plan and prepare for these large budget items in advance so that it doesn't happen as a surprise. And not to get ahead of myself too much, but just as an example, our new fire engine equipped out the door was in the neighborhood of $650,000. And that is a chunk of money. So again, I think we owe it to our community to make sure that we're as prepared as possible so that when that day comes, that we have some money in advance and we're not scrambling to replace that piece of equipment. In addition to that, we do a lot of planning for emergencies. One of the things that we do is we have an emergency operations plan that we tag on with the county, and we put into place, and you'll see that when we talk about our response to COVID. And in addition to that, we just went through a hazard mitigation planning process. And what that means to you is that there are structures in place, and we know how to operate in those environments so that if something big happens, we can make sure that we can begin as soon as possible getting the resources to our community as quickly as we can. The other thing that we've done is we've created to date 72 pre-fire plans. And what pre-fire plans are is they're information that we get about certain types of occupancies. So I can tell you, because I know I've created these, we have for every apartment building, we've got information in there like who the emergency contact is, where the gas and electrical shutoff and utility shutoffs are, if there's any hazards in that building, like if it has a heavy AC unit on top of it or something like that, that can collapse, or there are power lines in the area, where the fire hydrants are at. If there are any special needs in terms of there's a fire, what property needs to come out of that building, if it's a business, to make sure that they stay in business, we can get it safely and get it to the property owners to help them. We have that information in there. And to date, we've got 72 in place, and we'll continue to build on that. That information is loaded on our little tablets inside our vehicles, both in the command vehicle as well as the fire engines. And it's there so that at 3 o'clock in the morning, when everybody's got sleepy eyes and we're in the thick of an emergency, we've got something we can refer to that will be helpful. And then in addition to that, this isn't necessarily planning, but it is in the sense that we make sure that we're involved. And we're involved with the planning process that goes beyond us. So when we're talking about that emergency operations plan committee, I'm on that. And what that means is that not only is the city of Greenfield being represented, but the South County area is being represented as well. Because as you know, our needs in this part of the county are different than they are in the city of Monterey. And we want to make sure that we got a seat at that table. And we want to make sure that our communities are receiving the same service levels and the same considerations that other parts are. And how we do that, we're also involved with the Emergency Medical Care Committee. That's basically a committee that's a subcommittee of the county commissioners. And both myself and the city manager sit on that committee. And we do two things. One, we oversee the contract for the AMR or the transport provider to make sure that they're meeting their response time requirements. And two, we also make sure that any new policies and procedures that are implemented are being reviewed, and they're being reviewed by our specific group, either the BLS or Basic Life State Support Representative for the Fire Chiefs Association, and Paul Wood is the representative for the city managers. We make sure that we've got an awareness on that, and we take that information back to our respective group, we communicate that, but we also make sure that we're looking at it from a Greenfield and a South County perspective as well. We will be getting a member on the MAC committee. That's a committee that's just below the Emergency Medical Care Committee, that stands for Medical Advisory Committee. So they focus primarily on policies and protocols. And there's an opening on that, and we're trying to get one of our firefighters on that. And that's not only important for the same reasons that I mentioned, but it's an opportunity for our personnel to grow and develop professionally, because they're not always going to be riding in the back seat. Eventually, hopefully they're going to be engineers, they're going to be captains, and then one day they're going to have bugles on their collar, and they're going to be in leadership positions like I am. So we want to make sure that they're ready for those positions. And then I'm a member of the County Fire Chiefs Association, and we meet monthly and discuss issues and things that would be important to us down here, like mutual aid agreements and any policies and procedures that affect us from an emergency medical standpoint or a fire suppression standpoint, to include both structural and wildlife. And so we're active in that. And I can tell you that they have some subgroups as well. When we get our deputy chief on board, we're going to throw him into that full steam ahead. And then finally, we have several of our firefighters. We have 2 captains and our deputy chief that are both very involved at the MPC Regional Fire Academy. And that's important for a couple of reasons. It's technically, it's a side job for them, but it's important to us as a community and a fire department, because what it does is it keeps them up to speed on all the latest information. And you can bet that comes back to us and it gets ingrained in our crews. So we've got people that are, taking training to the next level. The other part of that is our 4th position is staffed by a part-time firefighter. And keeping those seats filled can be a challenge, but by having instructors there that are actually teaching these fire academies, it's like the greatest recruiting tool in the world, because they see these instructors, they look up to them, and when they get done with the academy, we get the best and the brightest. And I can tell you that since we've been doing that, we've had just some outstanding people come through. The sad part is, because they're so outstanding, they eventually get hired. But in the interim, we get to help develop them, hopefully send them into the fire service community with a little more of a foundation than they had before. But we also get some great people that help out and help our community out in there. Okay, another part of, I guess, readiness is, how do we get to you? We are a service that's mobile. So it's not like we provide our service necessarily at the fire station. I guess we do some things, but by and large, and particularly with emergencies, we take our service to the emergency. And so how do we do that? We do that with our equipment and our apparatus. So right now, this is our fleet. We'll soon be adding to this by 1 command vehicle, but this is currently what we have in stock. So up in the top left corner is our new engine. That we got. It's a 2021 Pierce Sabre. It has 1,000 gallons per minute pump, and it carries 700 gallons of water on it. And it also has a 35-foot ladder, which is important because prior to that, we did not have a 35-foot ladder, and we have some 3-story buildings, so we had no way to get on top of it. That engine has a service life front line of about 15 to 17 years, depending on how much we use it. But it should be in service for a while. The other thing I want to say about it is the majority of that was paid for through community block grants. Both one that was coming at the time, and 2 with some unused funds. So the city of Greenfield, or our taxpayers, didn't have to pay out of pocket for that. And I'm pretty proud of that. And that's $650,000. That was not only the fire engine, but that also the equipment that was on it. It was brand new. Everything on there. The only thing I think that was used, but was fairly new, was the breathing apparatus and the radios. We switched over into that. But everything else, all the extrication equipment, all the saws, all of the hose, everything brand new. So we were starting fresh. We had a piece of equipment that was going to last for a while. Underneath that, we've got a Ferrera believe off the top of my head, I believe that's like a 2006. So it's got about 5 or 6 years left in its life before we rotate it out. It's our reserve engine. We've used it quite a bit this first year with the new fire engine as it went through its break-in process. But we do need a backup. And then up just above the top row in the middle there, we have our Type 6. It's what we call 8451. Basically what that is, that's a vehicle that's designed with four-wheel drive to go into areas for vegetation fires. Although we responded to the majority of our vegetation fires with our fire engine, we just stretch those to get to them. We tend to use that more as a second out or when it's requested specifically to go into another jurisdiction to help out. Just below that unit is a new addition, and this is something we do not have in service yet, but it's something we're very grateful for having. Monterey Regional Fire District donated this to us, and this is a water tank. And this is I believe it's a 700-gallon water tender, and it's like a portable hydrant. And that's important to us for two reasons. One, as a fire district, we do respond to areas that do not have fire hydrants, so we need to bring the water to us. We have the ability to do that now. We don't have to call up Gonzales or South Monterey County. We have the ability to do that. The other place that it's important is on the freeway. And we can get some pretty serious incidents on that freeway. In fact, I think I just had a picture of a semi truck that had turned over. It was on fire. There are no fire hydrants on the freeway. This is how we get our water. So if we've got something big, we will have a water source to get. We have to call for that. So we're getting it outfitted. It just got the radios in it. We need to get our decals in there, and then we need to get our people trained and develop an operational plan in terms of how we're going to use that, use it effectively. And then on the bottom right is a 2019 Ford F-150 Command vehicle, and that's a vehicle that you can see me drive around. And basically what that vehicle is used for is for not only business for myself, but also to respond to incidents. So it's outfitted and set up primarily to serve as a incident commander, and it goes to large vehicle accidents as well as fires. Now, another part of our readiness, and this is something that we're proud of and we're very grateful that we got, and that's our training facility. So if you've driven past the public works yard off 10th Avenue, you've probably seen this big gray monstrosity with our sign on. And what that is this is something that we work with a company out of Paso Robles that sells and fabricates for special purposes shipping containers. And we turned this into a training facility that allows us to do different things. And if you can see, look at the picture to the right, it might be a little dark on your end, but basically what we're doing is we're using that 35-foot ladder. We made sure that this thing was 3 stories tall to ensure that we were effective with that ladder. Fire service ladders are very heavy, they're overbuilt, and they require a lot of technique and skill. And so we train with that regularly, but because they're so heavy, they beat buildings up. So this is a ladder that weighs well over 200 pounds. And when it's fully extended, you're thinking of the mechanics and the physics that are involved into that. You can see how the tip of that thing had a lot of force banging into a building. So it's not something you want to take to a nice stucco building like a high school or something like that, raise it and potentially damage their building. This thing is made for this. We can beat it up, we can bang it up, we can drag charge hose lines through it, and it's set up for a number of things in there. Anything from forcing a door to practicing ventilation, to search and rescue. We have it set up inside where we can rearrange the walls, and we've got a stairway in there. In time, we're going to put a sprinkler system in there. We're going to put a standpipe system in there, and that is to prepare us for the larger commercial buildings that are coming our way. All right, so now we're on to response. And when we're talking about response, we provide basically 4 types of response, and I'm talking about emergency response. First, and foremost is fire suppression, both structural as well as vegetation. Then we do, and this is the bulk of our work, emergency medical services. And in this county, we tend to call EMS the ambulance. But to me, I see us as part of that EMS system. EMS stands for Emergency Medical Services or System, and we are the first responder, which means that we typically get there first. And we set the stage for how the call goes, and I've watched that happen a number of times. Currently, we're providing basic life support. I'm going to talk about where we need to work towards in the future in terms of advanced life support here later in this, but we do that, and I can tell you that we do that very well. We had an incident, and I actually sent an email to the crew on this, and I regretted not forwarding it to the city manager. But we had a situation, I don't know, it's probably been about a month and a half ago. We had a critical trauma patient, and on my arrival, this patient was what we call an extremis. They were in a bad spot. They had the airway under control, as well as they were supporting ventilation, and they had this patient packaged on the backboard and ready to go for immediate transport by the time the ambulance arrived. And that was just spot on. That was exactly what we want to do. And effective DLS departments often make the difference. We've got a saying in the EMS world. They say that paramedics save lives, but EMTs save paramedics, and that's true. And I'd say that our EMTs definitely do that. Then we do rescue, which can be anything from rescue vehicle accident to a situation where we've got someone down a hill, or we've got confined space rescue, or that type of thing. And then everything else, hazardous materials, cats and trees, broken water mains, you name it, we go to it. For the most part, if it doesn't involve a bad guy, we're there. All right, so response and action, what's that look like? So in last fiscal year, we were dispatched to 1,658 emergency calls. And we break that down. And right here it shows that 52% of those were for EMS. But I would argue, because we have other types of calls that fit into that, primarily like the 600 series calls, where it's rescue, where even if it's a fire, there may be an EMS component to that. I would say that in terms of our emergency medical care, that we're closer to about 80%, possibly even higher in terms of our total service volume. Then you can see that we run a number of false alarms, a lot of service calls, anything from a fire hydrant that's been broken to a broken water main. It could be something as simple as somebody who has broken a pipe in their house and they don't know how to turn it off, and they call us, and we want you to do that. That's property damage, and our job is to preserve property. If you don't know how to turn it off, we will go there, we will turn it off for you, and then we'll help you clean that water out of your house to help you preserve your property. Now you can see that fire is only about 3.26% of what we do. And that's the reason why we involve ourselves in other things. That's why we respond to medical calls. That's why we go to these other types of emergencies, because you've got this ready force that can be deployed at any time. And for 3% out of 1,658 calls isn't a lot to send them out the door. So there's other ways that they can be used. The other thing that I'd like to point out, though, that we're proud of that number, because that low number means that the fire prevention strategies that we're implementing are being effective. So we don't want a high structure fire number. We want to do everything we can to prevent fires before they happen. And if anybody in here has ever experienced a fire at their house or seen one, I can tell you they're devastating. Even a small room and contents fire, it's going to damage or have an impact on almost every piece of property inside your house in one form or another. They're very destructive. All right, now another part of our response, and kind of getting back into the bigger picture of the countywide disaster plan, one of the things that we were involved in was with COVID-19. So not only were we responding to 911 calls where a number of our patients were in distress from COVID-19, we did have a period in January through February 2021, almost every single one of our calls involved a COVID patient. And we were responding regularly to critical patients. And I'll tell you that our firefighters were right there on the front lines. Remember, that was before the vaccination. And they were in there and they were taking care of business. And they were doing things like making sure that they were wearing their masks, keeping themselves healthy by taking vitamins, making sure that they were decontaminating all the equipment. Even at one point, they had a little bucket of water going in an apparatus bay that they would step in that had bleached water in it to make sure that we weren't tracking anything into the fire station. And the reason why that was important is because we didn't want our people to get infected, because we're in there together. And we know if one of us gets it, all of us is going to get it. And that can impact our service delivery to the city. So we did get a few people who got it, but by and large, their prevention techniques really paid off for us. The other part of that is that when the vaccine did come out, we wanted to be part of that. And so what we did was we were able to train 12 of our firefighters to administer the vaccine. So the state and the county approved EMTs to administer the vaccine. And we did do that. And we were involved in that in a couple of different ways. One, we hosted our own clinic. We partnered with Monterey City Fire Department. We hosted our own clinic. In fact, the two pictures on the left-hand side was from that clinic. We vaccinated 300 people. But in addition to that, we sent our firefighters out to assist clinics. We had them at Me Memorial regularly. In fact, if you look at the picture on the left-hand side, that's engineer Francisco Vasquez, and he was in there at Me Memorial Clinic giving vaccinations. And we did that for a while. We also assisted other fire departments in other parts of the county where we went to those drive-through vaccinations. And the reason why we sent them out of our area is because we knew that COVID could come into Greenfield. So every step and everything that we could do to help prevent it was going to prevent it coming into our community and affecting our community. Okay, now I'm going to share with you a couple of videos because we talked a lot about what we do. And we've got some video footage here that hopefully you can see. And it's going to give you a firsthand look at some of the things that we do as a department and what our service delivery looks like. So the first one here is a vehicle fire, and you can watch it. One of the things I want you to pay attention to is how fast they put this fire. So we're talking about aggressive fire suppression. I'm not kidding. Watch how fast they do.
Ready when you are. Ready.
Okay, so that fire actually happened on Memorial Day. You heard the siren in the background. That's the chief well behind it. So I went because I thought it was on the freeway. It came and it was on the freeway. I wanted to set up some safety distance for them, but they're so fast that I mean the thing was out by the time I got there. And the other part of that is when we're talking about protecting the environment, one of the things that they did after they got knocked down, foam on it to make sure that it stayed out, because when it gets, it's obviously not drivable, so they're going to have to tow it away. It probably goes on a flatbed. Last thing the tow truck driver wants is drive it down the freeway and starts on fire again. So we make sure that it's out. But right next to that was crops. Okay, and agriculture is our community. That is money in there. There are farmers in there, and we know that they have a lot of regulations. So we made sure that when we were putting the water, both from the toxins that were coming off of that burned vehicle as well as the foam, we diked a dam around it. We made sure that none of that water got into the crops. That's part of protecting property as well as the environment. All right, the next one I'm going to share with you is just a short clip of a piece of some of the care that we provided for a medical patient that was flown out. So there's no information that will show you who the patient is. We didn't break any patient confidentiality or anything like that. But just to kind of give you an up close look at what our guys do, and I want you to listen to what they're saying to this patient as they're taking him in. So that's the ball field out at Patriot Park. We use that for a landing zone regularly, and we have a couple of responsibilities. One, we're involved in patient care, so we continue the patient care until that patient gets into the helicopter, and we assist the ALS personnel that are also leading the care of that patient. But we also ensure that we take care of the landing zones, we set it up for them, we provide all the communications with the flight crew, letting them know about any special needs that they may have with their landing zone, and we provide us their safety lookout as they're landing. Okay, so that's response, but here's a lot of what we do, and this is the not so glamorous side of it, but I'll tell you, it's, in my opinion, it's just as important as emergency response, and that's prevention. And a couple of things have happened since the city has been gracious and in my opinion, ethically and smart to do the right thing, which was to take over the fire district to ensure that to not only take it over, but to help it and to help it grow, to ensure that the citizens of our community, not only the city, but even in the fire district, have a high level of care. And whether it's for fires or it's for medical patients. But they did a couple of things right away. And these are a couple of things that I was tasked with when I came on board. So the first thing, we adopted fire code, and we began adopting city ordinances. So we made sure that we had the latest version of the California fire code with all the Monterey County amendments in there. So we made sure that we were doing everything else that the rest of the county was doing. One that makes it easier for developers because they know what the county requirements are. They didn't necessarily have anything special here, but they're still very thorough fire codes. And then we started getting some ordinances in there. And the big one was weed abatement. And that was important because, as we know, we're living in a historical time for fires in the state, and trying to do things that we can to prevent vegetation fires, even if it's just a small field or something like that in a residential area. The right conditions, the right winds, a small grass fire can turn into a structure fire, which can turn into 2 structure fires, which can turn into 3 structure fires, and that's not something we want. So if we can prevent those things, we do that. And we've got a robust weed abatement program, and that's based off of our ordinance that one, the city manager directed me to take care of, and two, that our council made sure was implemented and they thoroughly vetted it to make sure that it met our needs, not only from a safety standpoint, to ensure that we were administering it fairly. And we also do inspections, and we do two types of inspections. One, we do business inspections. So we send our crews out. Every crew each month is assigned 2 inspections that they have to do. So they go into local business. And they do that for a couple of reasons. One, and we don't charge for our inspections. We're one of the few fire departments that don't do that. We see that as part of our job. 2, we're not in there to find something wrong to point it out to somebody. We're in there to keep them in business. So what we want to do is if we can point something out to them that prevents a fire in their business, and we know that we have a lot of mom and pop small businesses in this town, and some of them may not be insured. If we can prevent them from having a fire, we're going to keep them in business. They're not going to lose income, and people aren't going to lose jobs. So it's important for them. The other part of that is we're talking about the pre-fire planning. We get to update that information. So we've got the right, we know we have the right contact information, and our firefighters get to learn that building. So if we do have an emergency in there, they're familiar with it, and they know the owners, and we've got that relationship, and we know we need to know about it so that we can serve them the best as possible. The other inspections that we do, we have mandatory inspections that we're required to do by the state. They involve all schools, all apartment buildings, which are 3 living units or more, and all medical places. So we go in all hotels and boarding houses. So every year, and we're starting to go into that time of year, we inspect every single one of them, and we work with the property owners. So you've probably seen out there on apartment buildings, you're seeing sign that says electrical shut off here and that type of thing. That's because we've been doing those inspections, and we've been working with the property owners and explaining to them, hey, we're not here to point out something wrong, but this is code. But the reason why it's code is if there's an emergency at 3 o'clock in the morning, you want, and if you can't see, when it's raining and there's smoke, you want our firefighters to be able to find where to shut off the gas as soon as possible. And hopefully, if we can find some things that we can prevent the fire, we won't be here in the first place. The other things that we do is we do some public education. We're not doing as much as I'd like us to do, but I think we'll be doing more here in the future as we build. We do plans reviews where we work with a consultant that goes through every single building plan to ensure that it meets fire code. And it's safe and it's doing the right thing. The other part of that is that it's also sent to myself, and occasionally I'll share it with our firefighters to make sure that it meets our operational needs. So are the fire hydrants located where we want them? Are these things that we're going to use located in a space that we can get to them so that we can make sure that if we ever have to use them, that it's as easy for us as possible. And then we do hydrant maintenance. And I guess this isn't really prevention as much as it's maintenance, but we work with the water department and we flush every single fire hydrant. And this is our 2nd year doing it in the city. So you'll see our crews out there. And the reason why we do that is even the best water systems can get sediment and rocks in there. And what we want to make sure is that the hydrant works. And we do find hydrants that don't work and report that to the water department and they get fixed. You don't want to find out a hydrant doesn't work when the house is on fire. And if there's rocks or debris in there, we have it flushed out or the bulk of it's flushed out before we have a fire. And it doesn't impact our firefighting capability. And we do weed abatement, and I think we've talked about that enough. So here's prevention in action. And these are some pictures that were taken during the first year of doing some of these mandatory inspections. And I know it's a little dark, so I'm going to point a few things out to you here. So the first picture here, what I'm showing is that's what's known as a fire department connection. We use that to supplement sprinkler systems, and that's in an apartment complex. A fire in an apartment is very complex. It's dangerous, and it's something that there could be a lot of property loss, and there could be a lot of threat to life. One of the things that we do is we will connect to that sprinkler system with a fire engine, and we'll supplement how much water is going through them. So the amount of damage that the fire is creating before we can even get to it through our hoses is improved. And fire sprinklers, not all fire sprinklers go off, just the ones in the affected areas. But if we could knock down more of that fire, we can prevent more property damage. But if you look at this, you can see that that's actually turned into a valve there, a backflow valve, and there's no way that we can connect our hose to that. And had we not been doing inspections, we wouldn't have figured that out. And again, at the fire, we don't have the tools to spin that thing the direction that we need to spin it. So that was something that we were able to identify and correct so that it wouldn't be a problem. This was also at an apartment complex, and you can't see that very well, but what that is the electrical intake into an apartment complex. So you can see that on that particular building, there's 3 meters there. So that is the power that comes in from the transformer and powers that building, and there's no cover on that. And again, it may be a little hard to see, but if you could see it, maybe you can see it on your Zoom or your Facebook, but at the bottom there's leaves. It's been that way a while. So this was actually one that I caught on an inspection. And as I'm walking around and I'm noticing this, there are children playing within 6 feet of this thing. So this was something that we addressed immediately, and we got in touch with the property owner right away, and we got it taken care of, as well as I personally went and made sure that everybody in that apartment complex knew about it and to keep their kids away from it. But that's what these inspections do. Here's another example of this didn't necessarily happen on an inspection, but it came across our radar. And this is at another apartment complex, and what you're looking at there, and again, it might be a little hard to see, but that's a deck. So this is a 2-story apartment complex, and we've got the main header support beam there that's completely rotted out. It has another deck on top of it, and then right there we've got this beam. This is the bottom of it. It's kind of hard to see, but it's rotted. And as we're examining this, we know that there's an animal, there's a dog that's kept outside there, and there's a little kid in this downstairs apartment that plays out there. So this was something that we addressed immediately, and we partnered with our building department to make sure that it was taken care of. These are the kind of things that keep you up at night when you know about them. But we want to find them and we want to take care of them, because what we don't want to have happen is we don't want to show up at that house with a collapsed deck on top of a 3-year-old kid. That's not what we want to have happen. We'd rather catch it in front of them. All right, now this next video I'm going to show you is why we do abatement, weed abatement. So you'll remember, probably about a month ago or so, we had that fire up in Soledad, and it was up in the riverbed, and people seeing the black smoke, and everybody's, oh, another King City event. Well, that was a fire that was in the vegetation. There was also a lot of garbage you could see in it. But the reason why we enforce, and I don't like using the word enforce, but the reason why we take prevention seriously is for this, because this is a good example of what our crews had to deal with. We went up there to help out on automatic aid, but you can just see what garbage and what overgrown vegetation can do in the right conditions.
Yeah, I got an operator heading back to 37 right now. It's been advice. Yeah, Puffer 37.
I'm gonna go ahead a little bit further just to look.
Hey, Delgado, hold on.
What was that, Cap?
Hey, the 37 light.
And just for information, those firefighters in the orange, that's a CTF or a prison crew works with CAL FIRE, and I'll tell you, they do a fantastic job. It's just an incredible program, and boy, when we need them, they're there, and they do great work for us. And you can see that they were being put to work there. That's just an example of how small fire can become a big fire, and why we want to do everything we can to prevent that from happening in the first place. That fire did burn an outbuilding. I don't think it was a very valuable outbuilding, but it did burn some property, so there was some loss in it, as well as just exposing firefighters to those toxins and then putting off just that nasty stuff into our environment. Okay, so that's an overview of what we do. Now let's talk a little bit about the future. What are some things that we need to be thinking about? Because not only do we need to be making sure that we're taking care of today's needs and doing a good job, if we're really doing our jobs, we need to be thinking about 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Now, will I be here then? No, I won't be here then. But it is my job that if I can do things now to make sure that whoever has my job in that time period, some things were taken care of, and they were taken care of in an intelligent and thoughtful way, it's going to make their life easier, and it's going to continue to help the community that we serve. And so some of the things that we're looking at are dealing with some of our challenges. One, we've outgrown our fire station, and we're going to get into that here a little bit more in a second, but it's a great fire station, but we've outgrown it. It's 20 years, a little over 20 years old, and it's getting due for some upgrades. The second thing that we're seeing is we're seeing an increase in our call volume. We average about a 3.5% increase per year. Some years it's in the 6s, some years it's in the 2s, but if you look at it over a 5 to 6 year span, you're going to see we're right about 3% per year. Now, when we're getting into 1,000 calls, that's the number of calls. And so 3 years on top of that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And what does that mean? It means that we've got more service demand, and it means that we've got to address that. And we're going to have to address that in a couple of different ways. One of the things that I want to talk about is as we see this increase in call volume, we experience what I call back-to-back calls. Now, back-to-back calls are calls that are defined as calls that happen within 20 minutes of each other. We use the 20-minute benchmark because 20 minutes is typically what we're on scene of our normal call, which is a medical call. So we're on and off scene, 20 minutes, we're committed to 20 minutes. So if another call happens within that 20 minutes, we're committed. That means that we're going to have to call an outside resource in to take care of that emergency. All right. So in 2021, 226 times we had back-to-back calls. And that's an increase from the year before. Of those 226 calls, 41 of those calls happened within 5 minutes of each other. And I'll tell you why that matters here in just a second. But before I do that, we had a very unusual day. This was, granted, this was an unusual day, but we're going to have these types of days more and more and more as we get busier and as our community grows. August 5th, 2021, we responded to 17 calls. We were dispatched 17 times. 11 of those calls happened within 20 minutes of each other, and 4 of those calls happened within 5 minutes of each other. At one point, not only had this community for emergency response cleaned out what was available in Greenfield, but we had tied up just about everything in the South County area. So we need to think about that. Now, again, unusual day that hasn't happened since, but we can't expect it to happen again. And as we grow, it's going to happen more frequently. So how do we deal with that? And actually, I guess before we get to that, I want to talk about why it's important, why time matters. The first thing that I want to talk about is why it matters with fire. So if we're committed to a call, it's a medical call, and a fire breaks out, we cannot abandon that patient. We have to stay with that patient until the patient is transported. We'll free ourselves as soon as we can. But if it's a fire, we're going to have to stand by. If we can get out of there, we will, but there's a better chance than not that a resource further away is going to respond to it. I'm going to show you a video here, and it's an older video, and I apologize for that, but I think it's effective. But as you watch this video, I want you to think about a few things, because this video, I think it's about 3.5 minutes long. We won't go all the way to the end. But here's what I want you to think about. The first thing I want you to think about is what we call as detection. So detection means that a fire is discovered, whether a smoke detector activates and alerts the occupants, whether a fire alarm system activates, notifies the fire department, or somebody sees it. And it can vary. If it's in a building that's not occupied, it has no detection system, it's the middle of the night, it can be going for a while. That's what happened with the California pizza fire. That fire had been burning a long time before anybody discovered it. The second thing I want you to think about is reporting time. So it's been discovered, now we're going to call 911, and the 911 operator is going to start processing it, dispatch the fire department. On average, it take about a minute, minute and a half. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. But we're just going to say, and these aren't scientific numbers, but just for the sake of saying so, I think they're fairly good numbers. Take it anywhere from a minute. We'll say a minute. Then we've got the time that it takes for the firefighters to get the notification, get in their gear, and get in the vehicle and start rolling out the door. And that's anywhere from a minute, and they're very good at that. In the day, they're usually under a minute. At night, it can be a minute and a half to 2 minutes. All right? So time is adding up. Then we have to travel to the fire. So not only did we have the time that it took to discover the fire, to report the fire, and to get the firefighters out the door, now we have to get there. Depending on where it is, I'd say a good average time is 3 to 3.5 minutes. And then, as you saw in that car fire, we have to pull the hose off. We have to get out of the fire engine. We have to pull the hose off. We have to do the things we have to do before we get water on that fire. So just think about those numbers as you watch this video. And this is a video from the National Institute of Safety and Technology. And what they're doing is they're just kind of timing a fire and watching it grow. Apologize. Watch it. Think about smoke detection. Go to science. Operative chief, fire engine. Fire. Its ignition temperature, and it's caught on fire. So one, time matters so that we can get there, so that we can save people that may be in there or cannot get themselves out. Two, that we can save property. And it also matters that we have a smoke detector that works. You saw how quick that was. That was like we're 2 minutes and 37 minutes into it, and we had flashover in your typical room, your typical conference. You could not survive that room in your pajamas. And it could trap you, and you might have to escape out your window. Okay. The other thing I'll say about that from a prevention standpoint is make sure your bedroom doors are closed when you go to bed at night. That keeps the fire and smoke out of your bed. Make sure they're closed. Make sure that your garage doors, if you have a garage that leads into the house, make sure that is closed as well. Okay, that can save your life. Okay, the other reason why time matters is from a medical standpoint. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but if a person goes into cardiac arrest or they're not perfusing blood, permanent brain damage, so we start killing brain cells, it will not come back after 4 minutes. So the sooner we get there, we can intervene or somebody else can assist with CPR, the better survivability of the patient. Also, things like heart attacks, as well as strokes, are time sensitive. Those are situations where important tissue is not being perfused with blood. So the sooner, and even BLS firefighters can do this, are trained to recognize and notify the ALS providers, hey, we have this situation, so that they can begin immediate transport of that patient and early notification to an appropriate facility to make sure that that patient gets care. And if any of you have ever had a family member that has had a stroke or has had a heart attack, you know that the sooner that they get treatment, the more life-changing it is, especially with a stroke, because strokes can have life-changing and long-term effects. The other part of that, and we talked about the call that we had with the critical trauma patient, but getting that patient to the hospital and to a trauma surgeon sooner rather than later keeps them alive. Paramedics and EMTs do not save trauma victims. We keep them alive until they get to the hospital. They require a surgeon. So the sooner they get there, the better chance of survivability. Okay. All right, now I want to talk about some of our challenges and needs. So, as you know, the fire district sustained a number of years of some financial challenges, and as a result of that, a lot of maintenance was deferred. And that was reflected in both our fire apparatus and as well as in our station maintenance. I believe the first year that I was here, we spent, I think it was over $36,000 in repairs in the fire, just trying to get them up to speed. We had times where, unfortunately, we had them bolt down. We had crews covering for us, but we had mechanics in our station trying to get them up to speed. And it's not necessarily anybody's fault. I don't say that critical in any way. It's just the reality of the situation. You don't have money, you stretch money as far as you can. And that's true in your personal life as well as in your professional service life. And so a lot of things within the station were deferred as well. So we had roof leaks, and you can see that there's a dividing wall there between the apparatus bay and the fire station. It's one of the areas that we had a leak. We also had a leak on the western side of the station that was leaking. And as a result of that, not only did we have a leak, but we had mold issues that we had to deal with. And we dealt with that last year. Thankfully, our insurance company helped out with that, but $60,000 later and 4 days of not being able to put our firefighter, or 3 days of not being able to let our firefighters stay in the station, or actually a travel trailer for a few days, we were able to deal with that. In addition to that, we've got a generator. That generator, when they built that fire station, that generator was donated to them, I believe, by Meade Memorial, who had an extra. We had it given to them, I think it was by Fort Hunter Lincoln. That's an old generator. They put it in, they wired it. Unfortunately, and to my knowledge, they never worked. So we have a fire station right now without a generator. And so what that means is when power goes out, and power does go out, we have to manually go down there, open the doors, to raise them. And depending on the emergency, those doors may or may not get closed. We had one situation in particular where actually what caused the power outage was a vehicle into a power pole. That caused our power to go out. But as we were getting dispatched, we were getting reports that the car was on fire and there was a person trapped in it. We're going to open those doors. We're not going to wait to close those doors. We're going to get to that patient and that person as soon as possible. On the way back, when we cleared, we found homeless people inside our fire station. It's not a good situation. So if we had an emergency generator, that's just one example of why it's important we would be able to secure our fire station. If we have a disaster and we have a long-term power outage, we need to make sure that we've got our batteries charged. We have a lot of equipment on there that's electronic, as well as making sure that our communication equipment is up and running as well, which is critical to our mission. So the other part of that is our fire station. We've outrun it. They did a fantastic job on that fire station. And I put this picture in here on purpose because there's a couple of things I want to point out. So when I was talking about thinking about 20, 50 years down the road, our forefathers did a good job on it. So first of all, this fire station is positioned, I think, in my opinion, just about the best place in the city. It's right next to the freeway. It comes you right into the heart of downtown. It really doesn't take too long to get anywhere in our city. So if you have one fire station, they did a fantastic job of positioning it. The other thing that they did is on the property, they positioned this thing perfectly. It's right in the middle and it's set up so that it can have an addition put onto it. Because they knew one day when they designed this thing, it was an all volunteer organization. They didn't have firefighters that spent the night in it. The area that our firefighters used to sleep in, when they originally designed this, had a pool table in it. And it was a rec room where they would hang out in. Okay. Today it's used as a sleeping area. So it's being used for something it wasn't designed for. When we're talking about increased call volume, if we need increased personnel, we've got it set up for 4 people, but it cannot accommodate any more than 4 people. If we were able to get an ambulance crew, or we had a battalion chief, or we're going to staff another engine company or something like that, we could not do it. We need to build out at some point. And then on top of that, it's time to look at these roofs that were leaking. We spent a lot of money chasing those leaks down, but eventually those repairs will fail. We've got garage doors, openers that are outdated. They're over 20 years old, and we put money into those things on a bi-monthly basis. Something is going out, and it's getting to the point now where they're starting to have a hard time finding parts for them. So we need to think about that. We need to think about replacing those things. Up in the sleeping area, they have 2 HVAC systems. HVAC systems typically have a lifespan of about 20 to 25 years, depending on how old they are maintained. Ours are still going strong. The challenge is these things are located in the crawl space, so they're going to have to deconstruct the area just to get them out to start with. But I think it's time to rethink that design, maybe get them up on the roof where they're easier to change out in the future, and just take care of replacing those things before it becomes a problem. We don't have a training area or a place. We don't have offices in there. In fact, I keep my office in here, and we're going to be converting a little admin area that we have now for the deputy chief. These are temporary fixes. We've got our captains using their work area back in the kitchen. So these things need to be addressed as we grow. We also only have 1 shower, and we don't have separate sleeping quarters, and we have female firefighters. These are all things that are important that modern fire stations have. So it's time to do that. And I'm just throwing that out there, and the city manager gets a speech every week when I go in and bug him. So he knows about it. He's over there yawning right now. Really shut up. But I'm letting people know that it's something that is going to need to be done. And I'm also going to throw out there that it's expensive. Okay. It's not cheap. And obviously we're going to look at ways to do that as cost effectively as possible. And we're going to look for grant opportunities and everything we can But the bottom line is these changes do take money. The other thing I want to talk about in terms of money is the cost of fire apparatus. So we talked about that fire engine, 650,000. And did the cost for things ever go down? No. So today it costs $650,000. When we're ready to replace that thing in 20 years, what's that going to cost? $700,000-800,000. Okay, these things are expensive. A ladder truck, we talked about getting a ladder truck at some point. We will need one, and we could use one now, but we have other things that I guess hit on the priority list. But to get a ladder truck with a 1,000-foot stick ladder on it, a pretty bare basic model, you're looking at anything anywhere from $800,000 to $1 million. Again, it's a 20-year piece of equipment. So these things are important, but they're not cheap. A command vehicle is to outfit it the right way. A new one, you're looking at close to $100,000. Mine was not that. We did it on cheap. If you ever get in my vehicle, you can see that I've got like push locks and I got everything in there as cheap as possible. But at some point, we need to get them outfitted. It's bare bones basic. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about is not only our current needs, but looking into the future. Increasing call volume means more stations. And I think, we're at the point where we really need to be thinking about where a second station is going to go. And when we make that decision, we need to think about purchasing that land. It doesn't mean that we're going to put a fire station on it right away, but we have that land secured. We're ready for the future. And again, we know that land typically doesn't get cheaper, it gets more expensive. So it's an investment in our future. So when the city is ready to move on that, they can do that. The other thing we need to think about is with our increasing call volume means that we're going to have an increased call volume for our ambulance transport service. And when we have those days where they're stretched thin as well as we're stretched thin, having paramedics and being able to provide advanced life support makes a difference. It's something we need to look at, and we need to start preparing for it. We do, and I can tell you, I've worked in a few different cities, and I was a paramedic, a certified paramedic for 20 years, and also served as paramedic chief for a number of years, and I've started an advanced life support program. I can tell you with confidence that this place needs paramedics. It would be a benefit to our community. But that takes money, and that takes people, and that's not a cheap endeavor. And so we need to plan and prepare for that, but it's something that's on the horizon we need to think about. And then the other thing we need to think about is just the reality of our future. And if you look at the bottom left there, that's an electric fire engine, people. And those are coming. And they may not be right around the corner, but at some point I know it's going to happen. I don't know what they're going to look like, but I know that they're going to have different needs than your Tesla. It's not going to be like you can go plug it in for a couple hours. This thing needs to be ready to go out the door all the time. And it's going to require special infrastructure. So when we're thinking about building new stations, we're thinking about remodeling stations, we need to think about getting together with the experts that may not have all the answers, but might be able to give us an idea. What can we put in place now that when they do have an electric fire engine in that fire station, it's got some of what it needs so that we're not tearing up the apparatus bay floor to put in a utility vault or something like that to power this. Again, this is 2022. We don't know what they're going to need in 2042, but if we can do some of the things that we can to help them, that we want to do. All right, so we've talked a lot about what we've done. We've talked about the expense of equipment, and I want to share one last expense with you on equipment. I want to tell you what a firefighter costs in their equipment walking out the door. When we're talking coats, helmets, gloves, pants, and boots, we're looking at about $3,500 a piece. Okay, when we're talking that air pack, we're talking about $1,500. So that's the air pack, that's the bottle, that's the match. And when we're talking about other equipment that they have, radios, tools, Portable radio, by the way, is another $1,500. So we're looking minimum, when a firefighter steps off of that engine to be equipped, we're looking at $6,500 right off the bat. That's a lot of money. That's an investment. We do take care of our equipment, but we use it, and it's important. And I want to share this video with you. And I'm just going to say a few things about this video before I share it. I'm sharing this to you because I want to show you what our firefighters do, what they expose themselves to. And then this is also a great video because it's an actual situation unfolding. And you probably won't pick up on this just watching this, but at some point there, you're going to see that we find out, or we're getting information, we have someone inside. Okay? So initially, when we get there, we're thinking we have the fire and it's threatening a house on the back and we want to protect that. In fact, you'll see me walking around and I'm talking with them saying, hey, go ahead and dark identifier, get around to the back, protect the house on the back. And then boom, just like that, we get information that there's somebody inside the house and we got to go in and we got to take care of business. And so, yes.
How long ago was this?
This was just a couple of weeks ago. So this is recent. And so watch this unfold, see how subtle, see how calm and cool and professional these guys are. Watch how aggressive they are. Watch how they expose themselves to the hazard without even thinking twice about it. And watch how quick they get in there and take care of business. And if there was somebody in there, there wasn't, thank God, but if there was, they were in there. And the last thing I'll say about what you don't see is you're going to see the perspective of the firefighter on and off. What you're not seeing is the captain searching that house, going through every room, looking under every mattress, looking in the bathtub, looking under the bed, looking everywhere. They literally flip the mattress up, looking for someone in there. So if there is someone in there, we can get them out of the house. Okay? And we'll
Hey, help me out with this.
But what I want to show you, see a police officer and a person standing off to the side. That's one of the occupants of the building. And that police officer is about to get information. Yeah, I don't want to blame this one.
Hey, hold on.
He's getting information that there's someone in there, and the police officer is going to bring that information around. I'm doing my walk around to the building, trying to see what we have. But we get it this quick. Ed, quit doing it. Get it, everything's there.
Go ahead.
Hey, stop. This way.
Hey, hold on.
So stand there real quick. Darken it, and then come over here.
I don't need to put my mask on right now. Good.
We're gonna darken it real quick.
Good. Might be someone inside the house.
Chief. Huh? Confirm? Yeah? Let's go. Let's go. side you going? Where you want to go? On this way?
The room where the fire is, where the guy is at.
Okay. I don't see anything. On this side to the left. See anything? See anything? All right, take a deep breath.
Okay. So, got it taken care of. And I want you to see that because I want you to see why this equipment is important. I wanted you to see how, and it's not just that crew. That crew did an excellent job, but every crew does it. They won't hesitate. They'll go right in and they'll be aggressive and they'll take care of what they need to take care of. And they do their job, which is protecting you, and they don't think twice about doing it. And they'll do it on a flip of a dime. I mean, boom, they're in there just like that. Okay, so I'm going to end up here, going back to our city's strategic objectives. So I think you can see what the things that we do to ensure a safe environment. Not only do we respond and deal with emergencies, but we also, for our prevention, we do that. We promote a diversified, sustainable economy. So particularly our prevention, what we can do to keep people in business is our job. We know that if their businesses are healthy, then frankly, the city is healthy. Ensure a healthy, enriching environment. We talked about some of the environmental things that we do, and you can see the things that we do through our training and through our daily practices, which we're delivering the best service that our community can obtain. I guess with that, I'll open it up to any questions. If I have to put you to sleep with this already.
I have no question. Sorry.
If you can come in. Well, actually, in your case, let's state it to you.
I have to send this for
You know, talking about the hydrant, the water hydrants, you said that you do it once a year, and how many are they in our city?
Oh. It's well over 100. I want to say like neighborhood of 160. I'm not sure on that. It's what we do is we have taken the city and we've divided it up into like little quadrants.
Mhm.
And then we assign each crew a quadrant. We do it over like a 3 to 4 month period. And we say, hey, you know, A shift, you got this area, and get all the hydrants that are in it. We give them a map of all the hydrants. And if new hydrants have been put in with the development, make sure that you add the location of the hydrant and check that one as well.
Yeah.
But we do it annually. But if you see a problem or an issue, let us know. Because we want to know about it and we communicate.
Well,
it
we
to
don't
the
know if
water.
there's an issue, you know, if there's no water leaking, I guess there's no issue, right?
Sure.
I mean, and so when you go ahead and you check them out, is there like a date to put on there? like for you guys to know when was the last time you guys checked it out? And it may be something that the public can look into it and say, hey, they haven't checked this one out. Sometimes you think about the fires, and you wonder if the hydrant is working. And maybe if the community around where the hydrant is, maybe we would know, what, this haven't been checked for over a year. I mean, I don't think it's happening, but I mean,
We keep a log.
oh, you do keep a log?
And we do certain things. So what we do is we flush the big port in there. We flush it. Our procedure is we crack that open. We make sure that all the rocks and debris, so we flush it until it's brown water until clear water. Then we will pull the caps off the large port, and then the two smaller ports. We'll put a food grade grease on there to make sure that that cap can get off. And we make sure that we can open everything completely and close everything. And then we look inside at the large valve. There's a cotter pin that's on that valve. So we go through an inspection process that we follow when we do that. Then when we're done, what we do is we have a log. And on that log, if the hydrant has a number on it, we'll put the number, we'll put the brand of the hydrant, like our typical hydrant here is a Clow. We'll say what type it is, if it's a wet barrel, a dry barrel, how many ports it has on it, and if there were any issues with it. And what we do with that is at the end of the month, and in fact, I got my hydrant book in there, I can grab it and show it to you. What we do is we take that log and we give that to the water department so that they have it and they keep it, I guess, in their records. We're not keeping anything thoroughly. Now, with our new public works director, we're going to be expanding how we work together and do this, I think, a little better in the future so that we're not just doing it on a piece of paper, okay? And the other part of this is that the reality is when we do come across a problem, it's not like it just goes on that piece of paper and we wait. What happens is the crew, they'll call me. It's not uncommon, I'll get a phone call, hey chief, we're out here in front of so-and-so, Main Street, and we've got a fire hydrant that's not working. Perfect, great. Send me a picture of it, I'll get on the phone with the water division, let them know, and we bag and tag it. They get on. If it's something they can repair, they repair it right away. If it's not, they'll put a garbage bag on it. They'll let everybody in the fire department know that that hydrant's out of service. And then when it's back in service, they let us know and we communicate that.
Okay. I guess she's camera shy, so she doesn't want to come over here. But anyway, her question was, how often do you do inspections, like on restaurants, fast foods? Is it once a year, or is when something is reported?
So I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Our prevention and our inspection process isn't where it needs to be, okay? But I'm also going to say that, when the city is over, we're pretty much, the fire district was doing just everything they could to keep the doors open. So some of those things didn't happen as much as they could have happened, but they just weren't able to do that. So we're focusing on that. What we do right now is we get an inspection, and we have software. It's part of our ESO software. It has an inspection component to it. And what we'll do is we'll go in, and this isn't the best, but we're going to get better at it. We want to convert to tablets, but they have a sheet of paper, they fill it out, and they bring it back, and then I fill it out. And I'll be honest with you, if you go in my office, you're going to find I'm behind a couple of months with getting that in there. I read them and see if there's any major issues, but getting it into our database hasn't happened as well as I'd like it to. But we do have a database, we have it in there, we know when it's been inspected, if it needs a reinspection. For business inspections, unless there's a big major issue, we really don't do a reinspection. It's more, hey, fix this, get this taken care of. And we do a lot of work on the front end. When we schedule the inspection with them, we send them information so that they can prepare for the inspection. Really what that means is take care of any issues that might cause a fire sooner than later, not wait for us to point it out, and they take care of it. We do have a database, and we're going to be expanding things. Now, one of the things when you talk about restaurants, what we do get, and we're not getting them as regularly as we need to be getting them. Again, I'm being honest with you. I'm looking you in the eye. I don't feel 100% about this, but we're working that way. We should be getting, and I'd say we're probably about 35 to 40%. We should be getting the quarterly inspections that are required for like those hood systems that have the special cooking systems that are in there. You know, you pull the handle, you've seen that one, or we've talked about having one at the, I think the Lions place, you know, they're supposed to have it for cooking fires or for cooking on a fire. They're supposed to, the company that does it is supposed to send it in to us. We get them, I scan them and I keep them, but we need to get a better system where not only are we doing that, we're entering that into our database. Where this department needs to be is at any given time, we can look in there, we can see who needs an inspection, what's been done, what hasn't been done, and we're on top. And again, not from an enforcement standpoint, but just more from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the issue was as far as on the Pizza Gourmet, you know, that maybe there was something wrong there and it was not inspected over the last 2 years, or, I mean, this is just, you know, hypothetically thinking, you know, could that have been prevented, you know, if there was some issue, if there was an inspection?
Okay, well, let me say that I shed a tear with everybody else when Pizza Place went away.
I know.
So that, you know, that was my pizza place too. Here's the challenge with it. One, it was built in an era where it didn't require sprinklers, okay, and it didn't require detection system. It was also an older building, and we couldn't, for safety reasons, get in there and pinpoint an exact cause and origin, but we were able, with an ATF investigator, narrow it down to an area of origin, which was the attic. And most likely it was electrical in nature, and we don't normally get up in the attics when we do our inspections, you know, and crawl around. So if it's like a rodent that had eaten some of the conduit away on the Romex or something like that, it may have been something we may have not found. But if it had been a building that had sprinklers in it, buildings are required to have sprinklers in the attic. If it had a detection system in there, what would have happened is the fire would have happened in the attic, the sprinkler head would have gone off, that would have alerted the fire department, and basically we would have went in there would have been smoke, we would have turned off the sprinkler system, and we would have helped them squeegee water out of their building and told them that they needed to get it repaired. The place would have been down maybe a month, and you and I would be back in our ranch pizza.
Mr. Wood, any idea how long, I don't think, or Bob, any idea how long that pizza was? I don't think it was that old for it, you know. That old. Wow. Sorry, I didn't think it was that old. Yeah.
As we get older.
Yeah, and my last, this is, I guess, is just a comment, and, you know, I'm very grateful with your knowledge and what you're teaching the firefighters and everything. You know, I know that we had an incident last night with my grandson. You know, the first responders, right? And you guys are, and you were there like real quick, you know, and my husband was ill and you guys was real quick. I don't hear nothing that we're doing wrong as far as our fire department. I hear a lot of good comments, you know, and I just want to go ahead and commend you for, you know, all the good things that you guys are doing there, you know, saving lives and, you know, et cetera. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
And it's due to them. And when you say I'm teaching, I share some things with them, but this is a pretty knowledgeable group. And I can tell you that this is, and I'm grateful for this. This is definitely a fire department that when the alarm goes off, I'm not worrying about. And I've worked in fire departments where the alarm goes off or I get to a fire. It's very stressful.
It is.
Because I'm worried about that in there. These guys, I worry about them, but it's not like, it's not like I don't trust them. So I trust our people. And I got high standards.
You know, just watching the videos that you showed right here, you know, it's like, it's nerve wracking, going into the fire, you don't know whether they're gonna get trapped or something's gonna fall on them. So, it's a hard job. And you know what, before I forget, do you do any presentations like in school? Because I think that the kids would benefit, now with all this technology, they have like a cord and, like 20 phones out there or an iPad and the whole thing. And I think a lot of times when you put a lot of stuff in one thing, it could cause some type of hazardous, like electrical stuff and I think that would be something good, even at Vista, especially in the high school, that it would be great, if he would do like a presentation or something, to the kids or work something out so that the kids know, the safety. And I think that's where we're at, safety, not only through the household owners or whatever, we can explain to our grandchildren, to our sons and daughters, about the safety and all that. But how many parents really do, And I think that hearing it from you, from the real, fire chief or fire department, fireman, I think that would be a lot helpful for the students.
And
Thank you.
and you're correct. And I've had a goal for a couple of years and I'm hoping I say this like kind of standing on the edge, worrying that if I sound like I commit to this, but I think I'm going to actually make it this year. It's called Fire Prevention Week. And it's the third week in October every year. And my goal has been to get our firefighters in the school and fire prevention. And it does a couple of things. And I'll be honest with us. Yeah, the high school kids are good, but I like to start with them young for a couple of reasons. One, we start putting information into them. We ingrain it into them soon. And then the other part of that is, guess who the worst culprits usually are in the house for some of these fire prevention? The parents. But we send them home with activities and with information, and then hopefully it's shared at the dinner table and they do it as a family, and then the whole family prepares and it turns into an activity that's fun, but it may be life-saving. So that is definitely the goal, and I'm hoping with my new top-notch admin assistant and with the deputy chief coming, that we can start focusing on some of those things, because that's very, very important.
For our tech guy, any idea how many people join on Zoom? Just one? I love that we have these workshops. I have a lady that's really sick, so I haven't been able to come to the other ones. But I think those workshops are great. And I think that, I don't know what it is that we're doing, that we're not getting that many people in here, but then we're quick to, to complain. I can say I complain sometimes, but it's because I don't go to what I needed to go. So there's gotta be another way of how we can go ahead and communicate with the, I don't know how we did, as far as communicating with the community, maybe on a water bill, maybe, whatever. But here we are, and how many people are we here in our city of Greenfield? And you're doing a heck of a job. Thank you.
And, the reality is with the fire department, I can't speak for other departments, so I don't have that experience, but here's the reality. They really don't think about us until they need us.
Exactly.
But, which is fine. But when they need us, we want to make sure that we deliver. Any other questions? Any comments on? No? Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.